Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Serapio. Thank you for joining us on Primetime Politics this evening. A big night as the Carney government's first budget passed its final hurdle, adopted by the House of Commons, but not by that much. Take a look at how it all went down.
Pour 170, 170. Nays contre, 168, 163.
Je déclare la motion adoptée. Thank you, sir.
Now, there was no guarantee that the budget would pass today. This is, after all, a minority parliament, with the governing Liberals 2 votes shy of a majority and 2 votes shy of a guaranteed win. But in the end, the Carney Liberals were helped along by 5 MPs. Conservatives Matt Genada and Shannon Stubbs did not vote, nor did New Democrats Lori Turnbull and Gord Johns. And the Green Party leader Elizabeth May, well, she dropped her earlier objections and decided to vote with the government. Well, with that, let's bring in our panel for this evening. Lori Turnbull is a professor of political science at Dalhousie University. Michele Cadario is a Liberal strategist and executive vice president at Rubicon Strategy. Beside her, Jordan Paquet, conservative strategist and vice president at Blue Sky Strategy Group. And George Soule is an NDP strategist and founder and principal at On Step Strategies, a panel I like to call 3 strats and 1 Lori. Hello to you, the 4 of you. Just to make sure no one's confusing, you're not a political strategist, Lori. But I want to begin with the holdouts because, as I said, the Liberals were in a minority position, helped along here by those who did not vote. And to that, we're talking about Conservative Shannon Stubbs, who, by the way, her office confirmed that she was on medical leave for surgery that was scheduled before the budget was announced. But along with her, Matt Genada, Lori Turnbull of the NDP, and Gord Johns. When I say those names, quick go around the table. Do any of those names surprise you that they abstained essentially from this vote, Lori?
No. I think that we probably knew that in order to get the budget through, that the NDP would have a couple of people who didn't participate, because I think it was really important for the NDP to have a stance that was against, frankly, and not for. I think that helps to kind of differentiate themselves from the relationship they've had with Liberals over the past number of years. I think it makes sense for the party, but they didn't want to tank the government over it, and so they had a couple of people sit it out. Shannon Stubbs, as you said, has a medical situation where she wasn't going to be attending. And I didn't think Matt Genada was going to show up for this to vote. Absolutely not. Like, if he stepped away at the timing that he did, and it created this big splash, I couldn't imagine that he would show up, whether in person or online, to cast a vote.
Okay, I want to pick up at Matt Genada because I have to say that is a name that surprised me, considering the Conservative Party did, by all accounts, worked very hard to make sure he did not cross the floor last week. Why should we not be surprised that he did not vote this time around, Jordan?
I think he's just taking some time. I mean, I don't know exactly what's happening, but I think he's just a little break. A couple of weeks ago would have obviously been very, very tough. He would have had everyone from media to pundits to apparently Liberals calling and Conservatives calling, everybody calling, trying to call his family and stuff like that. So I think just taking a bit of a break, taking some time off. He said that he's going to be around till the spring. So no, I agree with Lori. I wouldn't read too deeply into much of this. I think this is just a matter of basically all the parties in Parliament determining that there's no appetite for an election, basically amongst any party. It's a risk for anybody, and I think that's why we saw the result of the vote that we did today.
But any political repercussions for Matt Genada for not voting against this budget?
I don't think so. I mean, he's already said that he's stepping down, so in the spring. So I don't think there's anything more that they can really do with that. Matt's a great guy. He's been a great parliamentarian, and I think the party definitely wishes him very well in the future.
Okay, and you're nodding as well, so you're not surprised by the fact that he did not cast a ballot this time?
I would have been flabbergasted if he showed up, like absolutely flabbergasted. And if he did show up, I'm not sure which way he would have voted. I would have been very surprised. After, as Lori said, after everything that happened last week, there was a lot of drama. There was a lot of attention and focus on him and him alone, really more so than the budget itself. And he's kind of made his stance. He's getting out of politics. I don't know that it's a break or a forced break or however you want to call it, but he's not in Ottawa anymore. And so I think that he was the one vote that you could count on. I think that the math was always going to work out. The Prime Minister seemed to be pretty confident all day. It's just like that niggle in the back of your mind, like, are they really thinking this through? And all those, some of the switch votes where they weren't kind of recorded necessarily correctly on the online, that was a little off, a little stressful. You know, no one wants an election, as Jordan said.
Yeah,
and here we are
although,
today.
and as we were saying before we went on air, you know, I think we all expected it would pass, but there's that 1-2% that you're thinking, okay, is this going to be an accidental election? But still, I do have to question the government on this one. I know, George, you've been talking about this because, you know, here we have a minority government who essentially presents a budget. Instead of trying to create an alliance with one of the opposition parties, it creates a budget and presents it as if it has a majority government. Does this expose Liberal hubris?
I think for sure. I mean, had we gone to an election, it would have been the government's fault. It's their job to govern, and that, period. There's no other question around that. It's their job when they're in a minority government to find the votes. And instead what you found was the other parties kind of saving Mark Carney from himself in some ways today. Yes, and I think, you know, for whatever it's worth, I know that Gord Johns and Lori Turnbull both want to have their abstentions noted, because I think there was some balance in this budget. While it was not a budget that the NDP wanted to support, there were a few items that matter a lot to Gord Johns, for instance, that were there, and there was some stuff for the North, even though there were also cuts for Inuit children. So it was a mixed bag, which is where those two landed. But we also saw, for instance, Andrew Scheer, who had some technical difficulties and voted at the end because he was waiting to get the head count before he said how he was going to vote. I think he was ready to abstain had that been necessary. So you had both the major opposition parties having to save Mark Carney from an accidental election. And I think there's going to be a lot more confidence votes coming up. And I think that Mark Carney shouldn't take from this that he's got it in the bag. I think he should learn that he can't count on these people every single time because they might pull back.
Yeah, you're nodding yes on this one.
100%. I think that this is a moment where, as we've said, nobody wanted to go to election right now. And so this will come and go. But I'm really curious about Mark Carney's attitude toward Parliament more broadly. And not to make this all about this right now, because we're talking about other things, but he's going to leave again tomorrow, right? Like to get up and of course, you know, he's going to go to G20. He's going to go and keep pushing on his agenda of building new trade partnerships and things like that. But at the same time, I'm not sure that Parliament is the center of the universe for Mark Carney. I don't think it keeps him awake at night that most of the members are not on his side. I think he'd take a majority if he could get it. If he had to go to election, fine. You know, there's nothing else he could do about it. But I don't think that he's itching to hit the polls. I think that he is concentrating on other kinds of centers of power. And I don't think that the count in Parliament, again, is something that's really going to stress him out a whole lot.
Okay. I wonder what your reaction to that is, Michele, and whether or not you think that is a pitfall for this Prime Minister.
Well, I don't think that Mark Carney went into government to be a parliamentarian. I will completely agree with you on that, 100%. He came in because he's an economist who thinks that the country's in a bad economic spot, and that he maybe has the skills and the experience that can kind of guide us out of that. And that's how he's going about his business, right? He has no experience. He wasn't elected a long time ago. He hasn't spent time on the backbenches, nor do I think he'd do particularly well doing that, right? Like, let's be honest. But he, there's a certain reality that he doesn't have the necessary votes. And so, now he's in a strong position. He's 25 points ahead of our party, or 25 points ahead of Pierre Poilievre in terms of popularity. Canadians don't want an election. And I'm not sure that the opposition did him any favors because they're not in a position to go to an election either, right? Like, everybody was kind of doing what was in their own best interest for their parties and, quite frankly, for the country, because Canadians didn't want an election. Is that always going to be true? At some point, interests might start to diverge. And then the political skills are going to have to kind of come out or be shown, or, we plunge into election.
Yeah. And you can get in on that, Jordan, but I want to add to it the fact that when we watch the Conservatives this time around, and we know the Conservatives can be tough to an opposition party that's willing to work with the governing Liberals. We saw it with the way Pierre Poilievre attacked Jagmeet Singh and the NDP when they were supporting the True Liberals. We did not see the same fervor this time around from Conservatives. And I'm wondering what that indicates, whether or not that's indicative of turmoil within Conservative ranks, uneasiness with the polling numbers, in particular, to Michele's point, preferred Prime Minister, because Pierre Poilievre is 20 points behind the Prime Minister there. How do you explain this lack of fervor for the Conservatives? Because quite frankly, if Pierre Poilievre wanted to bring down this government, he could have worked harder to do so.
Sure, but I think as we've all been saying, like, it just wasn't in anyone's interest to call an election this time. And I don't think it was a conservative interest to go to an election right now either, because, well, we just had an election. Nothing markedly has changed really since that time. The Conservatives want to fight this out for a little bit longer, let Carney settle into the job a little bit more, and as he said himself, don't judge me on certain things. Judge me on the prices on what's going to be in the grocery store, and judge me on actual affordability measures. Well, if we look at this 6 months from now, and affordability hasn't gotten better, if the housing crisis hasn't gotten better, and the NDP has a new leader, then yeah, the things could be totally different, and things stack up for the opposition to bring it down. I liken this back to in the 2006 days. Liberals had just been defeated out of government. Stephen Harper had a minority parliament, but he didn't have to do a ton of horse trading. He kind of just presented semi-middle of the road budget, and people just kind of voted for it because nobody wanted to go to the polls. I liken that more as happening this time.
Was it 08 the
That was
prorogation?
later.
Oh,
That was later
okay,
on.
sorry,
Later on.
okay.
Yeah, later on.
Okay,
Yeah.
my
That was the
confusion.
08 one, but the first couple passed after
Okay,
that.
I thought you said 08. I thought you said 08, to my defense.
06 was the first, yeah.
Okay, but when you look at the Conservatives, though, because again, Pierre Poilievre could have worked harder to bring down a government. We've seen it before, or at least try to, when the polling numbers were in favor. Does that indicate anything to you, George?
Well, you have Matt Genera, who, I mean, the rumors across Ottawa, I'm not going to talk about them here on TV, but none of them are good about why he was pushed out. And it seems like there was a deal kind of done up for him to be able to walk out peacefully in the spring. And you're not going to see him till then for sure. He's just going to collect his paycheck and hide away from the people who are threatening him, I think. And you've got the floor crosser. And again, we know for sure there was at least one more who was ready to go, who has been held back. And who knows who else is out there. I think let's just be honest about this. The Conservatives are having a lot of problem in their own backyard, and Pierre Poilievre's numbers are not at all where they were 6 months ago. That is the only thing that has changed significantly, is how much his personal numbers have dropped. The next election is his last election to kind of secure his leadership. Either he becomes Prime Minister or he's done. And so he wants to make sure that happens on the best footing, and now is a long way away from his best shot at it. Mm-hmm. I wonder if this creates almost a cakewalk situation for the government, though, Lori, because and I think this was maybe a bit of the calculus in the back. They present a budget, even though they're a minority government, they present a budget as if they're a majority, because they make the calculus, the political calculus, that no one's going to want to pull the plug in this parliament in this moment in time. Does that create a bit of a cakewalk situation for this government for a while, Lori?
I'm not sure for a while. I don't think I don't think where they are really going to make their progress is going to be necessarily in Parliament. Like the Major Projects Office stuff, there was a piece of legislation that pushes that through. That's a framework. That's a governance framework. That promises nothing. Now they have to figure out each major project. Where's the private financing going to come from? How are they going to get agreement among groups around? How are they going to push it through over the 2 years? There's a weird, I don't know what's going on with the governance of that thing where the Prime Minister says he's going to recommend projects, and then he's recommending them to the Major Projects Office, and then they're figuring out what they're going to do with it, and then they recommend something back. I'm like, what the hell's going on, right? Like, are you recommending things to yourself? It's a weird thing happening, but none of it is happening in Parliament. And so it just seems to me that the approach of the government is actually taking a lot of the decisions that are going to make or break this government. They're actually happening somewhere else. They're happening in an office like that where, again, they're trying to find the finance, they're trying to find the private partners, they're figuring that all out. And if he's not able to put these things up in the window and say, okay, we've approved for real, these things are designated as national interest projects, the premiers are on board, there are private sector investors. That's the type of thing that I think he needs to happen. And if that doesn't happen soon-ish, then the kind of math you're talking about in terms of this sort of cakewalk for the government, I think that could evaporate. As we know, a couple of weeks is a long time in politics. 6 months from now, a year from now, I'm not sure it's going to look the same for the government. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody want to add on to that at all?
Well, I think what I would say is I don't think that he was looking short-term in this budget, right? Everything that he's doing is a much longer-term thing. Yeah. His challenge, and you're right, he's got to actually sell that he has a plan. And he's got to be having some benchmarks along the way so that there's measurable progress so that Canadians can see that and that they can kind of evaluate it as he goes along. I don't know that just, he set up these different offices and that But it's not that the government how government is functioning has changed all that much since the 20 years that I was there, right? You set the budget, and then really the departments kind of go away, and you figure out what you're funding, you figure out what you're not funding, you implement the programs and that kind of thing. It's a different kind of legislature, I guess, maybe from the start of it when we were making laws about absolutely everything, but now it's very much, it's a financial picture, it's a financial structure of how you're going to spend taxpayer money, and it's an accountability of how you did. And so, you know, where I agree that he is, you know, going to be judged by the major projects and that, what I would say though is, unless there are actual things that people are seeing, so they're going to start, you know, even as these projects are in the early stage of development, they're seeing jobs, right? It's not the major jobs, but it's a lot of jobs that are kind of in the pre-construction phase. He's trying to, it's an open window to say, come to Canada and invest here, right? This is a way to kind of do it. And I think that so much of that major projects office was a signal to the world and to world investors, not necessarily to Canadians. Now he has to tie the two together.
Mark Carney's not used to, sorry, real quickly, Mark Carney's not used to having short-term goals though, right? Like he is used to having a job where he can just say whatever he wants to say and say like 6 years from now, things will be better because we're going to follow this.
In politics.
And in politics, he doesn't have that kind of time. So it's exactly, like he can set up all this like ground foundational stuff he wants. But as you're saying, like if it doesn't turn around quickly, people aren't going to see it and that's how he's going to fail. This whole Prime Minister CEO thing, like he doesn't usually, and he's also not used to people pushing back because when they push back, he says, I don't care, I'm the boss, I'm moving forward. But now, those people who were pushing back actually control whether or not he continues as Prime Minister. And I think that is something he's got to get used to or he'll be out of a job. Yeah.
Well, and he's running out of fiscal room, too, frankly. I mean, that's a complete misspending over the last 10 years. And now this, like, wildly quickly, let's change the accounting methods because, you know, this makes the numbers look better. If there is an economic downturn in the future, hopefully there's not, where's any of that stimulus money going to come from? I mean, because he's already pretty stretched right to the limit right now.
Okay. Well, but we're in better shape than anyone else in the G7. Like, we're actually not at the limit. I was in government that was at the limit. I was there when the bond markets were saying, get your act together, Canada. This is not that time. There is a lot of fiscal room. Absolutely. He's getting the spending under control, which is, again, what the bond markets want to see.
I don't think it's under control with an $80 billion deficit.
We shall see. The promise is out there. Listen, I'm quickly running out of time, but a quick go around here. I'm wondering this drama of tonight, this potential of an accidental election. What does it say to you, and very quickly with each one of you, about the longevity of this Parliament, George?
I think it's. Yeah, we're looking at 6 months to a year, I think, max. I think there's another confidence vote tomorrow. I think it'll be fine, but they're going to keep coming, and I don't think the government can count on them for long.
Lori?
A week ago, I would have said, I wonder if he's going to claw his way to a majority because I just wasn't sure how things were toing and froing and whether there would be more movement. But now I'm not sure about that. I don't know if it's just a feeling or what, but it seems that things have kind of calmed down a little bit. Maybe it depends on what happens in the next couple of weeks. I think if Poilievre gets to a leadership review, he's fine. So, you know, it could be that, it could be that.
It's spring?
Yeah, maybe. Okay. Weird, but yeah.
Michelle?
We're going long. 3 years. Yep, 3 years. Long time.
Okay. Jordan?
I predict perhaps in the next budget. I think, you know, the NDP will have a new leader. Pierre Poilievre will still be leader of the Conservative Party. Oddly, I think the issue of Chris D'Entremont crossing the floor seemed to have emboldened a lot of Conservatives to actually support the leader. If there's one thing they don't like, it's somebody switching teams like that. And so I think that really sort of bound most of them together, of a lot of them I'm talking to. So I think he'll go in past the leadership review quite handily. And, we'll get through the spring. But now that the budgets are all in the fall, because of the change in accounting stuff, I think next fall.
Okay, next fall. I will say it's been a night of drama. Thank you very much for being a part of this. We avoided an accidental election. George, Lori, Michelle, Jordan, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Well, to explain why she voted the way she did, we're now joined by Elizabeth May, the Green Party leader. Ms. May, thank you for the time.
You're more than welcome. Thank you to CPAC for covering politics in real time.
Thank you for that. You know, we heard the Prime Minister earlier today in the Commons, a 35-second statement that made broad promises to meet the Paris and the Montreal commitments. How is that enough, or was it enough, to secure your vote tonight the way you did?
Evidently, it was enough. It's the first time I've heard the Right Honourable Mark Carney, as Prime Minister, make those commitments. And I take him and I respect the Prime Minister. I need him to say those words convincingly in that moment for all Canadians to hear. And I look forward to working with him in a minority parliament through cooperation to deliver on all those promises.
But you know, 10 days ago, Ms. May, you were stepping quite literally on the budget. We have video of it right here. You know, you were stomping on the budget because it talks about getting rid of the emissions cap, prioritizes industry over the environment. Will you pay a political price for siding with the government in this moment with this budget?
I think Canadians want to see that leaders in opposition parties use the opportunities to negotiate for better, and that's what I did. So we'll see. I mean, I can't predict whether I pay political prices. It didn't matter to me if I do or I don't. I had to fight for my granddaughter's future, to see my government, the government of Canada, step up and fulfill our legal obligations. And I didn't see it in the budget. It wasn't there. That's why I asked today, there's deficiencies here. We're silent on the Paris Accord, silent on the commitment to nature, silent on the various steps we need to make to ensure we save lives in Canada. So my commitment came from the words from the Prime Minister, and that changed my vote entirely.
Okay, changes your vote entirely. But is that a statement of your trust in this Prime Minister? Because when it comes to the environment, we've seen things from Mark Carney like killing the carbon tax, suspending EV mandates, a willingness to abandon emission targets. Do you trust the Prime Minister on the environment?
I have to say that there was no evidence that he was committed to our Paris Agreement targets, to delivering on the nature agenda, on Indigenous reconciliation and on adaptation, until he answered a question in question period today on the record. He has not stood up to answer my questions before. As you would know, this was a very important and significant statement, and I take him at his word. But I don't walk away and say, well, I trust you now. I know my role as an opposition leader in a minority parliament is to hold the government to account.
How much of this, Ms. May, was the Green Party's lack of preparedness to go into another campaign?
No, I had a lot of Greens who saying, go for it, go for it. We can double our caucus, we can triple. Look, no, it had nothing to do with that at all. In fact, that was one of the countervailing pressures of the numbers of people who said, let's get back to the polls soon.
So a 35-second statement from the Prime Minister today. Did you have private talks with him that helped convince you even before the question was asked today in the comments?
Yes. We've been talking, I've been talking to various ministers, including the Prime Minister, including members of his inner circle within the Prime Minister's office, and the conversations have been ongoing since November 4th. Various ideas were tried, floated balloons, they didn't survive. This one did, and I think it's significant. I have to say that in a minority parliament, and I share the feeling from most of my constituents, let's give the Prime Minister the benefit of the doubt. And in a context where our country is being bullied by Donald Trump, I'd rather see us pull together than be divisive and head to the polls.
Elizabeth May, I appreciate the time this evening. I know it's been a very busy day for you. Thank you for this.
Merci. Thanks.
Well, before the budget vote this evening, the Prime Minister also took part in a virtual meeting of Canada's First Ministers. This was the first meeting of Canada's premiers with the Prime Minister in months. And since their last meeting in the summer, well, trade talks with the U.S. have been suspended, some major projects announced, and some premiers even replaced, which is why the Prime Minister was called upon to convene today's meeting. And that had me asking the Premier of the Northwest Territories if patience with the Prime Minister was wearing thin because of the lack of meetings. Take a listen to what we heard from RJ Simpson.
No, I don't think the patience is wearing thin. I can't speak for the other premiers, but I can speak for our jurisdiction. And while the budget doesn't have everything we want to see in there, we know that we're having good discussions with the federal government. There's a different feeling with this government. They're listening, and their actions then follow up on what they've heard. So it's a big change from the previous government. And so even if we don't all agree on everything and we didn't get everything we want from the federal government, I think there's a recognition across the country that this government is working towards an end that we all want to see.
Okay, working towards an end that everyone wants to see. We did hear from Premier Ford today, and he seems to suggest that in a matter of days we're going to hear something on softwood lumber and steel. I'm wondering what you heard on that front in your meeting.
Well, I mean, I would leave any announcements for the Prime Minister on that. And here in the Territory, of course, we don't have a big softwood lumber or steel industry, but we did have a good discussion about international trade, the importance of expanding our trade partners beyond the United States, but also a recognition that we're always going to be partners with the United States, and we need to ensure that we maintain a strong relationship. So there was a good discussion on that, but I'll leave the details to the feds.
Okay, so we'll wait on that, and I appreciate these are not necessarily industries that affect the Northwest Territories, but I'm also wondering if you heard anything around pipelines, because again, there seems to be growing pressure, if not from the Alberta Premier, but from industry, and wanting to hear something soon about that.
There wasn't a lot of discussion about pipelines, but I know that the Premier and the Prime Minister have discussed it, and the fact that we're not hearing a lot about it, we're not hearing a lot of concern coming out of Alberta, I think shows that those discussions are fruitful.
So from your vantage point then, Premier, what was accomplished today?
Well, I think that communication is important. Relationships are important. And I've seen how strong the relationship between the premiers and the Prime Minister became after we had those regular meetings. And so I think that was reinforced today. And, we did have a long gap where we haven't really met. But the Prime Minister committed today to ongoing regular meetings. So I imagine we're even going to see a list of dates. So there's a little more regularity. So I think that's important, because when we stop communicating, when we stop talking, and there's a vacuum of information, that vacuum gets filled with things that often maybe aren't true or aren't accurate. So I think that's what was accomplished today.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And as Premier of NWT, RJ, what are you hoping comes from further meetings with this government? You talked a bit about the budget. We know there's investments being made in energy, investments being made in defense. What do you want to see out of Ottawa for your territories?
Well, I will say we have seen some things out of Ottawa already. In my previous experience with the previous federal government, we would go and have a meeting, and the outcome was almost predetermined. It didn't matter what we were there to say, but I've seen in the budget that was just released by the federal government, I've seen reflections of conversations I've had with the Prime Minister, conversations my ministers have had with federal ministers, and so that's encouraging. So we're seeing what we need to see. There's a focus on the North, there's a focus on critical minerals, there's a focus on Indigenous participation and consultation, there's money in the budget for streamlining the Northern regulatory system. So we're seeing a lot of what we need to see, and as we advance our bigger projects, we're going to need a lot of federal support, and so that's when we're really going to need to see some line items in the budget with our name next to it.
Okay, which of course means one day we're going to call you up and ask for another interview. But for now, Premier Simpson, thank you for this. Appreciate the time as always.
Always happy to be here. Happy to be here anytime. Thanks.
And again, our thanks there to RJ Simpson, the Premier of the Northwest Territories. You can see the full interview on our website and on our YouTube channel. But for this evening, I'm Michael Serapio. Thank you again for joining us on this special program of PrimeTime Politics. We are back tomorrow night, and until then, take care.